All right, hello everybody, and depending on where you are consuming this content, either welcome back to the channel or welcome back to the podcast. We are experimenting with killing two birds with just one stone, and I will tell you why that is right now. I have been reluctant to put podcasts on YouTube because sometimes they can be a little bit boring. You're just watching two talking heads talk. By the time you do the effort and put in all the work to get that up on YouTube, it doesn't actually seem like it would make sense to me, only because I don't consume that type of content. I know other people have asked for it. You want to see somebody's face when they're talking? Okay. But the numbers don't lie with the podcast, and the vast majority of people listen to the podcast rather than watching the YouTube channel. That's just the way it has been. This week is a little bit different, and our hand has been forced by Mother Nature. This was going to be the episode where each and every year I try and set up an episode with cinematographer Peter Mosman. Veteran listeners of the show will remember those episodes. I try and get them in the new year just because they are refreshing conversations of what it's actually like to talk to another cinematographer about the real work and the real life that goes along with that work. That can be refreshing. It's also now we've built up so many episodes in the past that we sort of have a running theme that happens in those episodes. That was going to be this week. Unfortunately, there's very large fires and we weren't able to make it possible. And the most important thing is now we need to get out a podcast. We need to keep the streak. Why let it die? And to do that, we're going to build on what we did last week. So last week, I did a podcast just about the favorite frames that people were sending in to the Patreon group, which really is the heart of the channel. It's the heart of the podcast. If you like this kind of content and you want to see it in the future and you want to get even more access to behind the scenes and the Discord group with all of the cinematographers, you can find a link in the description below, or you can find a link on the show notes page, which will be at wanderingdp.com/episode 469. Okay, that's where you can support the show. That's where you can find the place to submit all the images that we're going to look at today. Somebody came up with a brilliant idea of submit your favorite frames from the year. So in last week's episode, I went over my favorite frame, and then we heard some audio clips of other Patreon supporters who had gone over their favorite frames. And I thought, man, there were so many good frames in the section of Discord where we were dropping these things off. I thought, why not highlight some of them? And I will run through my own internal monologue of what I see when I look at those images. And you think, well, this could be a little bit harsh. I'm not going to be very nice to the images, even though they're the best of the year or your favorite of the year. Right? I should stipulate favorite because certainly the ones that I put forward, I wouldn't classify as the best images. They're my favorite for reasons that are outside of the frame. But the story that comes to mind when I see them ends up being, that's my favorite for the year. So rather than just jump into, I don't want to be too negative or too harsh, I am going to give a dose of what I actually think, because I think that can be productive. It's like, well, when I look at something, what am I actually thinking? Of course, I'm going to be nice to your face. Or I'm going to be nice even now, even though you're not in the room with me. If you shot these images, I'm going to be nice to you because you've done well to shoot the images. Some of them are fantastic. Others are really good. You should be proud of the work that you've done. But I'm not proud of the work that I've done. I try to be as realistic as possible to say, where could I improve? And I know that you spend the entire year, if you spend the entire year thinking that way, okay, that can be detrimental to your mental health, but it's going to be beneficial to your cinematography in the end because we're constantly error correcting. Like that is what learning is. We're error correcting all of the time. And the more that you go through the repetitions of error correcting and saying, what would I do differently here? Or what do I not like about this image? The more that you can do that, it would make sense that the more your cinematography skills are going to level up and increase. Because what are we really doing in the end on this channel, on this podcast? What we're really doing is trying to skip all of the steps that it used to take a really long time to become good at cinematography. Now, with our access to information, we can do it a lot quicker. So what's the most efficient way to mine all of the data and all of the information that is at our fingertips? What's the best way to go about it? Well, what do you actually get paid for when you're a cinematographer? You actually get paid for the images that you can conjure up from nothing. All right, there is nothing. You show up and you get an image by the end of the day or by the end of the scene or whatever it is. You get an image by the end. Now, if you can predict all of the different scenarios that you can bring into existence based on crew, on time, on tools, all of those things, and then you get to pick from one of those images. Okay, that really is cinematography. Cinematography to me is not going in and finding just happily stumbling upon a fantastic image. I certainly have stumbled on a few good images in my time, especially when starting out. All of my work was really stumbling. And then you're like, well, this is a very precarious situation to be in. If I'm getting paid to stumble upon things, well, it makes sense that sometimes I'm going to stumble upon complete and utter dog shit, and then I won't know how to fix it. So to increase my chances of self-preservation in the future and to have a career, I'm going to do my best to come up with ways of, well, how do I mitigate the times where I can't stumble into something, or the thing that I stumble into is not wanted by the production or the director or even by myself? How do I go about changing those things? And the easiest way that I found to do it is to look at other people's images and go, I like this. Now, you can't just stop and I like this. You have to say, why do I like this? What are the things inside of this image that give me the like feeling? And the more that you do that, the more you can see the things that you don't like. If you can identify what you don't like, it's even easier, right? If you invert the problem, it's way easier. That is the entire framework, is inverting and going, what do I not like? Well, I don't like when the lighting is flat. I don't like when the background is flat relative to the foreground. I don't like any of those things. So let me just eliminate those by creating rules that will, not rules, a framework that will help me to, at the bare minimum, not make something that I don't like, okay? So that little preface is what we're going to do in this podcast. I'm going to try and be quick. I'm not trying to, if I do come off as harsh, I'm going to talk you through my own favorites for the year of my 2 that I talked about last week on the podcast, just to show you what I would be thinking of my own work if I was talking this way. That way, if you get offended by me talking about your work, it's not as bad. Okay, let's jump in here. What do we got? We got my 2 images. Okay, well, how many are we looking at so we can think about time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we've got a lot to get through of other people's images. And again, this is all people inside of the Patreon group. They didn't ask that I share these things, but I thought if it's your favorite shot of the year, maybe it's okay. We're going to find out. Okay, so my favorite shot of the year. Again, I did this without thinking. I didn't want to go through the Rolodex of all the images that I had created over the course of the year. And this is like a still image. This is not a shot. This is not a sequence. This is not an ad. It's just like, this is my favorite image that comes to mind when I think about the day. Now, that being said, we can still analyze it from like, oh, could it be better? Absolutely, it could be better in my mind. It's like why I like this was for almost none of the aesthetic reasons. I mean, I do like the look of the thing, but really, it's like, well, how could we possibly make this better? I would say, oh, if we could get, so there's a window out here, right? And this window is being covered up by these shears over here to the right. And over here is the other part of the window that has no shears on it. So you can see the highlight difference right here. Do we make it a little bit bigger? Yes. Right here, do you see this highlight? Okay, you see how hot that is compared to this? That is because there is no shear over there. That means more level is getting through from the light that we're lighting with outside. And you'd think to yourself, okay, well, that means it's going to be really hot and harsh on our talent here. But that is not the case. Why? Because this light is actually super far over here on outside this window, and it is only for the background. It is only for this right here. Okay, this right here. But this is the light that gives off the feeling that we can then wrap with the actual key light, right? Which you can see in his forehead, which is over here. Okay, it's inside the room. And now we have the balancing act of let's light from outside and let's motivate from outside, but then let's wrap from inside and then let's control from inside. And this is the skill that I have been working on the most, actively working on. Like the images that I like, there seems to be this balance between the highs, the lows, and the key. Okay, and there's a little tiny groove. I can't explain it any other way. In my mind, I know when the feeling is right. I can't explain it mathematically as well because that's what the exposure course is all about. It's like, find out what ratios you like the best. This is the ratio that I like, okay? This level of darkness, and it's hard to see using Obsidian. It's hard to see all of the levels because it's going to change in the way that I record the monitor. But this level of key to this level of fill to this level of background, okay? This little triangle in here, that's what I like. So I already know that going in. So it can't be my favorite image if that's all that it's going to be. No, it's the whole story around it. But if I was looking at somebody else's image and they gave me this, I'm like, how could we make it even better? I would say, okay, because that's what I'm going to do with your images in a sec. So let me just walk through what I would say in my own images, something like this. I'd say, oh, okay. First thing would be there's a giant chunk of pretty flat over here. That flat thing would be my number one concern. It's like it's physically flat because there's a wall. But then also, like if we're thinking, again, defocus your eyes, just blur through the image. And what you will find is that like a little highlight over here would be nice. You don't want to like, okay, it is here. We've nailed it with dark part of his face on the bright part of the background. This is probably too hot, all of this up here, but this was like stainless steel and we couldn't get the reflection out of there. And we tried spraying the thing and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Polarizer, none of it would work. So we just had to end up with it being hot. Again, that's what I would say we could fix here if I could get rid of that a little bit and get rid of this a little bit. I like this level down here, but I'd like a little highlight over here or something. Like if we could come back, unfortunately we're right up against a wall, but if we could come back another, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet, and off of here this was the end of the cupboard. And off of the end of the cupboard, if we could have like a standing prac like this, right? Like just letting out a little bit of light and maybe it gives a little bit of edge here to him. Like now I'm starting to think that's how you get one more layer. Okay, we didn't get the layer. That's a bummer. But the entire time I'm thinking, right until it's like, okay, time to go. It's like, could we sneak in one more layer? I think it would have made it, better. It would have made a better still image. Would it have mattered for the actual ad? Probably not. But we're not talking about the ads. We're talking about the frames. So that's what I would say. I mean, I do like shooting into the corner. I do like again, her highlight of her hair on top of the dark part of the background. I mean, the location here is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm not going to go into all that location stuff because that's another podcast. But the balancing, like the thing that I'm happiest with for my own working on making this frame is not like, okay, the lighting, yeah, we came up with a plan, but somebody else did it. You know, the gaffer, the electricians, they do that bit. The contrast, okay, I like that we put up the 12 by neg over here and it took away all the level. I like the frame. It would be cooler. In my mind, I would like to be a little bit lower, right? If I'm a little bit lower camera-wise, this isn't so big and it flattens off a little bit more. So we can use the length of the table, the distance between here on the table and here on the talent, that we can just squish it down a little bit more. That's what I would like to see. But we couldn't do that. So this is what we came up with. And the balance, or like the overall mood, is what I did. I mean, that's really all I did. I decided what's going to be the mood. And when I say I decided that, I say, this is the mood that I'm going for. The lighting comes in, we make a few adjustments, and the director goes, yeah, this looks good. Let's keep going. And you're like, okay, well, it's sort of ready. This is the mood. And then they go, okay, let's shoot. That's a fun project. That's why it's my favorite frame. Because, yeah, we did a few things right. Could we make it better? Of course we could. So it's all in the spirit of just going to show you, even my happiest thing, I'm thinking, oh, we could make this way better. But we didn't. Actual favorite frame, I remember just now going through this. This was probably the funnest frame to make for the year. And this was, we went to Broome on an away job with a crew of 4 people. And we were making this job. And this is actually the sound guy. And the sound guy is a legend. And he was happy to jump in and be a customer. Or sorry, be talent on camera, trying to lift this guy's little suit off here. And this is super basic. We didn't do anything. There's no lighting here. There's no like 12 by neg. There's no bounce from over here. The sun is actually over here, right? You can see the shadow on this. But this is just, I would say this is the exact still, because we were so pressed for time and because we were so pressed for like, we have to get through this to get through the next thing because we're doing this whole montage sequence. This is where practice with the stills photography that I do. I carry the stills camera with me everywhere. This is exactly what I would take with my stills camera. I'd just be like, oh, what's the best angle? Where do we see contrast in the background? Where do I want to put his head relative to the sky? All of those things. Like this is a classic example of where all that pays off. And it's like, I like it. I like the shadow. I like the fill. I like everything about it. And you just sort of stumble into it. Now, does that have anything to do with cinematography skill? No. Absolutely nothing. We just stumbled into it, but you know how to take a picture. And if you know how to take a picture that you like, who cares what anybody else thinks, right? Unless the director hates it. Then you're in trouble and you're probably not going to get another job. But let's realistically think about it now. How many times you actually, that would be a good statistic that I should track. How many directors have I worked with in the past where I didn't work on another job with them? So just one and done. one and done, and one and done when I could have had an opportunity to work with those individuals more. Because then that would show you, like, you're not going to get fired on set. Like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. What are they going to say? Oh, I don't really like this, which means I don't like you, so you're fired. Never happens. Never happens. You're on the job. Make what you like, right? Make what you like. And then let everyone else figure out how to fix it. That could be horrible career advice. Okay, so now let's go through yours. We'll go through your pictures. So this is Josh's. He's the person that actually came up with the idea of submitting everybody's favorite frame. And I have to say, this is up there with this. If I would have shot this looks-wise, this possibly would have been my favorite frame. Tons and tons going for this image. I would say shooting into the corner of the room, not having white walls. Biggest thing. You're like, okay, if we take this image, right, just this bit, cancel all of this out. This is still, I mean, you're winning here. You're winning on any angle that you can shoot in here. This is the epitome of light the space, and then you can just get in there and hose it down. Now, to do this, to be able to set this all up, that requires skill. That's the cinematography part. So you go in, you shoot a close-up here, these two together. You do like the top-down over the bed shot. That's a classic. You could get away with here with changing nothing. Maybe you'd bring in like a little neg to shape this if you were going to do some close-ups or something. But this has all of the elements that we always talk about. It's got depth. You're shooting along things. And then if we take into account this bit over here, this is what I like. This is the level of dork that I am. Like, okay, if we can all do this, which we can all do it because it's just a framework. These are the little things where you fit in. You're like, oh, this is way better. Because you could imagine like this little desk over here. This thing is mobile. You can move this thing. You can change the angle. You can definitely change the angle of the mirror. You can change your orientation towards the mirror. But it's having this, like, imagine that highlight isn't there. All right, let's get rid of the highlight completely. It's kind of flat. It doesn't look that nice. It doesn't add that much depth. Okay, but as soon as you introduce just a little bit of curtain and sheer, right? It's like that is like chef's kiss. This is the thing of like, wow. It was pretty good before, but pretty good. It's like probably not going to be your favorite. Bang, hit him with just a little tiny thing. And that's cool. So yes, color makes a difference. Production design absolutely makes a difference. Lighting, all those things. But I'm looking at what I would get excited about on set is like, of course, it's going to look like this. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I like. I'm going to make it look like this at the start. Then how do I add on top of it? And Josh did a great job there. Okay, let's do the next one. What do we got here? We've got Cody in this one. I would say, okay, if I was doing myself on this one, I would say what I liked about mine versus this is the balance of key to background. Like, that's the first thing that jumps out. I mean, I love the frame. Frame is winning. And why is it winning? Because of all the same reasons that we always talk about. It's like you've got dark, then you've got light, then you've got dark, then you've got light. Like all of these little things, those little elements, again, defocus your eyes. Much like the camera is defocused. Like even if you don't look at her, you just look at these background people. That's what I'm talking about when I say defocus your eyes. Like you can make out shapes. The more primitive, almost the number of pixels that you're using to view an image, the more you're going to start to see what is creating the shape. And what is creating the shape is the light and the dark in the background. Okay, so all of that we nailed. I like that there's a little door frame back here. That's great. This little leak of light is awesome too. I would say just from a, like, how do we make it sit? Or if we go back to my image, it's like, wouldn't it be cool? Like, okay, I like it. Would it be cooler if this thing was a slash? Like, and we had like a ray of sunshine, like just blasting through. Yeah, that would be cooler. I mean, it wouldn't, how much cooler? It wouldn't be that much cooler, but it would be cooler. I would say what would be cooler here is, I mean, I like this little touch of black here, whatever that is. It looks like the frame of what is possibly the window that's lighting this person. I'd say this balance, I would just, and this is even a grade thing. It's like, it feels, I just come down just ever so slightly on the values there, the heat. But all in all, super looking image. Very nice. I like it. Okay, this one, this is from Gates over on Patreon. Again, it's cool. It's dynamic. We're talking about a single still frame what makes this interesting, you would want to, your favorite frame, you would want to take out and be able to put on your wall. And it's like, this is cool. It tells like a whole story. There's this dude and he's unknown. You can't really see his face. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a cowboy too, but this thing looks mechanical. What's he just practicing? That's a little strange. He's got the old fire extinguisher here just in case the mechanical bull overheats. Got a ladder up there too, just to get up to the roof. Good for him. I would say breaking it down from what I do or what I would like to add, right? Because this sort of feels like what I talked about before in what you would stumble into. And you'd be like, I just stumbled into an amazing shot. And we can verbalize why it's amazing and all of the elements that then make it seem better than, imagine if you were on the opposite side and you were shooting this guy and you were shooting into a dark cavernous thing and you had to expose for the hot areas of his body and it was lit up like a Christmas tree. It wouldn't be very good. So we've found this fantastic image. What could we do to sort of add just that little bit of spice? And it's the same thing always. It's like, could we have another little bit of light in here? Could we have, like, what would be cooler is another window or some bit of ambient over here? Because again, you get that huge swath of the image with nothing. Now, is it going to be better if there's something over there? I don't know. It's up to you. These are the little flares that you can do. Maybe it would be better. Maybe it would be terrible. But my running commentary would be, okay, this is great. Can we get something else in the background? Can we do something else? But man, all the balance is there. I like the levels of the highs relative to the lows. And I think that really is the sign of not only that you're getting the concept of having lots of variation in contrast in the image. Okay, like that's one thing. But then you have to sit the whole thing like in the right pocket of the distribution range. So if this is your histogram, right? Like this and this, not good. Even this, okay, probably not good either. But if we have there's a sweet spot in here where it's like that, and then like that. That little sweet spot, I think, is the thing. And finding it's almost like a superpower. You're like, oh, I know my sweet spot. This is it. Okay, let's go next. This one is from Alec. Looks like a CrossFit thing. Is there any other genre of video that have launched more cinematography careers than a CrossFit gym video? Like if you haven't done a CrossFit gym video, you are not an aspiring cinematographer. Let me tell you, get yourself out to a CrossFit gym and try. So first thing's cool, like shaft of light, great. I like things in the foreground. Those are cool. I like the lines here. Now, if I was on set and I had this image, I'd be like, this is going to be a cool shot. We're onto something really cool. Again, I would say this is the cooler half of the image. Well, you could sort of go like this, right? Because this is cool. I like this. That's the cooler bit of the image. I'd say, okay, what can we do over here? It's like, if we had another one of these, but it came like that, would that do it? Don't know. Just making things up as I go. But that's what I would be thinking in my mind. I'd be like, okay. Or do we just do like other layers in the foreground, like to make it just a little bit harder to see? Because where we're making people look is interesting. It's everything else that you aren't really consciously aware of, where I'd be like, oh, can we add to that? But yeah, I like the lighting. I like the angle. I like the things on the ground. I like the being low. I like all of this stuff over here. And this isn't one where you can't really have like infinite depth on some of these images, and that ends up being a good thing because it still looks fantastic. So I would say good job. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one's from Tom. And these things, I don't know why they came out so low resolution. But again, you start to see, I mean, it's not rocket science, what the kind of things that I am immediately drawn to. I like this image. I like that we're blasting a level through here. I really love all of this down here because you pick up these little accents, right? It's like these little tiny things are what I'm looking at. Like I could, let's care less about what we're actually looking at. But all of these little things are interesting. Those are cool. And those are not easy to do. Like the default is filled in hot garbage. And you're there to make sure we deviate as far away from just the norm, what is expected. We want to We want to access a state that is much less likely, right? We want something that is much lower in entropy than higher in entropy, because you have the highest chance of making something flat and not interesting. That is the standard. You have to find this stuff, and you have to create this stuff to make it like this. Also, I just like this little highlight in the corner, like this little window. Again, imagine it like this. It's not as nice, right? Grip's choice for a shot. Oh, we're doing a mid shot on a guy at a kitchen sink here. Grip's choice is not even that, right? Grip's choice is, there you go. It's like, well, that is a mid shot of a guy at the sink. What would be cooler, though, is if we added a little bit of depth, add a little bit of a layer. Okay, we come to this one. This one, to me, this reminds me of, remember there was like, I can't remember the photographer's name. It wasn't Chase Jarvis. Somebody like that, who had, like, their entire portfolio is like hyper realistic. Like, well, hyper realistic is not realistic at all. Lighting. This is like strobe lighting and it happens because you get the key to ambient ratio so distant. So it's cool if, like, that's the look that you're going for. I really like it. Much less natural, I would say. I would have fun creating an image like this, but I would say I'm more drawn to slightly more natural things. And the challenging part about doing this and making it natural, I would say, is having the firepower to deal with outside of this window. Like, that's just a super, super hot background. And my guess is that if you were to come at a different time of day at this location, this would be more down, and then you could get it to play, not like that, much more, I mean, you control like, it could be much more like this in terms of mood. So this is where you get to have your little cinematography style, and you decide what you like per the project. But man, there's interesting stuff going on. There's slashes of light back there. We've got this little edge on the side of his face. We've got fill from inside the room, which is always ambitious. I would say good job. Okay, this next one from Adam. Here we go. You're starting to see the theme of images that are being shown and images that I'm choosing to look at. This is fun stuff. It's like the key seems to be coming from out the window, but you could also be like, oh, is it coming from the bounce over here? Like, there's multiple suns going on, but I don't care. It's like we have gotten, number one, it's like just like a great still image. This lady just pondering things. Very much like I said in last week's podcast, like a Gregory Crewdson sort of. Is she leaving? Is she, what's going on here? Is she going on vacation and she's afraid of flying? Did she just shit her pants? Like, something's happened and she's paused for a moment. But I like it. I like all of the little details in the background. I like that we've got that, like, first thing that I notice when I see something like this. Oh, we've lined up, like, sorry, who did this one? Let's see. Adam knows, right? This is not by accident. You just don't stumble upon hot part of face on dark part of background. You know what you're doing. And then all the little balanced areas, not having it too hot, just enough to be able to fill in. And the shadows, you can see everything in there, but it's still dark. We've got so many light to dark areas in this image, right? They're just, it's peppered everywhere. And all of the lines going different directions, bed, window, other window. We've got this gobo effect over here. Like, there's a lot going on here, but it all works and it all feels really balanced and nuanced. So I would say, again, job well done. My favorite one from Kent was this image again. It's like, I like the things where sometimes you got to work a little bit hard to see what is going on. It's like, not just blah, here it is. It's like, I really like the low angle and the frame within a frame. Like, again, this is much like shooting a shadow on a wall or shooting a reflection. Anytime you have a frame, it's like, you're going to get something good if you use that frame because you're instantly creating depth. So do yourselves a favor and use the frame. And then to have this little lighting coming down here, who knows? What are they doing there? They're lifting something up, right? Doesn't look like fun. Looks like hard work. Not for me. Okay. This might be my favorite. This is from, what is it? Metatoro. This as like, you could easily put this on your wall. And why does it work? It works for contrast, and it works, well, framing, of course, as well, right? Like, we've got all these little out of focus elements, but you're kind of working hard to see, like, oh, what's over there? Like, this is an interesting neighborhood. Like, oh, I'd like to see over there. But you've got highlight on one side, lightness. And then on the outside, you have the highlights dark window or dark blinds, whatever it is that we're looking through. It's like that balance between the two. And then it's the opposite on the faces of the people. Now we've got light over here and we've got dark over here. So it's like all of those little elements play, and there's so much depth that this does what a good still image should do, which is I want to see more. Like, what's this? Where are we? What's this world that we're in? Feels like you couldn't get a better time to capture this image than when it was captured. It's like, oh, you nailed it. Like, what else would we add? Not much. What would we change? Not much. Really, really well done. This one's from Dylan. I like this one. I would immediately be thinking, people that have listened to me talk about shooting in cars knows I love this angle. I love being outside. I like that the two are split up by this thing. Like, you could easily sell some Vanity Fair story about, well, we did this because they were going through relationship troubles and she was thinking about, going out with Bob instead of going out with Jim, and maybe that's a good thing. And that's why we ultimately did it. We chose silver because, it's not black, it's not white, it's sort of in between, and that's their relationship. Or you could just be like, it looks cool. That's why we did it. Looks great. I would instantly be thinking if I was behind the camera at this point, I'd be like, how do we sell the director on 239 for this frame? Because I would like, not even that. I want like oof, that. Maybe I actually kind of like that too. So it'd be like, not even. You want sort of the roundness. Maybe we go 2-to-1 instead, because all of this stuff up here is not like, I don't know. It doesn't immediately jump out to me as much as the rest of the frame, but I like the angle. And it's like, well, could you screw this up? That's my constant question to myself. Could you screw this up? If I was there, could I screw it up? Be like, yeah, I could screw it up. If I can screw it up, then that means the person was doing something good. Okay, next, Damien. We've got one from Damien. And when I saw this, I was like, oh man, all of the tones, all of the color, all of everything. Great. Selfishly, man, if you could get this lady to just step out like a little bit more and then slight pan to the left, so maybe lose a little bit of this, and get a gap between her head and the background, that would be me. I'd be like, oh, can we get a little bit camera left, right? Can we get her head just here in the frame? And then that'll open up a little gap in the background to add a little highlight in there. Because all of the exposure, all of the balance, all of that, I love. Color, everything. So it's a beautiful image, and it's a striking look, and yeah, it's interesting. I would definitely take it. But if I was complaining in my own head, I'd be like, oh, could we? Is that a thing? And is that it? I think that's it. I think we made it through the entire thing. Oh my God. I was doubtful. But yeah, you look at some of these, just quickly passing them through. It's like, this is good. This is good. I'm happy that there's people out there who also like this stuff, who want to make images like that, because that's what I find interesting. And that's the whole point of doing this, is sharing oh, this is what I find interesting. What do you think when you look at the images? Are you looking for the same thing? Which is why it was fun on last week's episode. When we get people to actually describe what they like about their images, they're vastly different than what I think. You start talking about story or something. It's like, okay, you lost me. I'm thinking about, wouldn't one little glow of a prac be nice there? That's how my brain works. Which is to say, not very well. Okay, so that is the podcast this week. Next week, somebody asked how I use Obsidian for my own projects. And because I have a very limited brain and memory, I don't want to clog that with stuff that I shouldn't have to remember. And that's exactly how I use Obsidian. It has changed my cinematography in the past 12 months. So I'm going to do another podcast on what I would actually do for a project, like how you use it as a second brain to make the images better. Because if we can organize our thoughts better, if we can organize that information, which are our thoughts better, we're going to be able to be more efficient with our choices. And more efficiency on set and before being on set is going to ultimately lead to a smoother experience. And a smoother experience should lead to better images. If we get better images with a smoother experience on set as well, with less fluff, generally people like that. Producers like it because you get all the things that you said you were going to get done. Crew like it because they know exactly what they're doing, and they can have their own time to manipulate things and to have a little bit of freedom and not be completely micromanaged by somebody that's panicking on set because it looks like hot garbage. Like that's a thing. And directors like it because you tell them, well, they tell you, this is the look that I'm going for. And then you tell them, yes, we can do it. And then on the day you go, ta-da, I told you we were going to do it, and we did it. And we did it faster than you thought, so you get more time with the talent. Is that good for you? Yes. If I'm not a D-bag, can you have me back on another job? Yes. How do I not be a D-bag? I try and not talk much, right? Because I don't want to give up the gag that I am, in fact, a D-bag. That's pretty much the cheat code to how you get more work. Do images like these, and then put them into a little reel, and you got yourself a career. Okay, everybody, that's going to do it for this week on the podcast. Many thanks, and we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.